So as you can tell, I'm not in my usual RJ's Trains getup. I literally just got home from work about 5 minutes ago. There were just a few boxes waiting for me on the front stoop. And I have been waiting over 4 years for these to finally show up. So I'm going to unbox these off camera as to not bore you guys. Um, and yeah, I'm so excited to finally unbox these. Make sure to use code RJTRAINS at trains.com for $10 off any order $50 or more. Before we dive too far into this video and we check out these awesome heavy charger locomotives from Third Rail, if you're also a huge fan of modern day Amtrak like I am, make sure to check out thirdandtownsend.com, which is where you can now place all of your Third Rail, Sunset Models, Golden Gate Depot pre-orders, because not only are they doing another run of these beautiful charger locomotives, make sure to get your orders in, but they also recently announced that they're making the all-new next-gen Acela in O gauge, which is really exciting. The orders have been really good on those, so make sure you go place your order for them if you're interested, because you know, you don't want to be like us and the cool kids holding these awesome Amtrak locomotives and you're wishing you had them. Thankfully, like I said, the ALC 42s are on, they're getting ready to do a second run. So get your orders in for these. And you know, you don't want to miss that first run, maybe only run. And here they are, all out of the box, all three of them. These are the all new Third Rail by Sunset Models charger locomotives. Up on top, we have two of the Amtrak ALC 42s in the Phase 7 and Day 1 Heritage paint scheme. And on the bottom loop there, we have the SC44 painted up for MARC. So let's take a look at what I believe to be the most beautiful diesel locomotives ever produced in O scale. Third Rail announced the ALC 42 charger locomotives in 2021, just as Amtrak were rolling out the real ones for the first time on the real railroad. So it has certainly been a long time coming for these locomotives. I believe I placed my order for the three of these over 4 years ago from the date of arriving, and they were worth every single second of that wait. We'll take a closer, more detailed look at each one of these models and talk about their significance, and of course, we'll end the video by running them around the layout. So the first of the three locomotives that we will be talking about in today's video is this MARC SC44. And for those of you wondering, the SC just stands for Siemens Charger, and 44 denoting that it has 4,400 horsepower. Now, MARC is definitely an obscure railroad in terms of model railroading and O gauge, just because their licensing is so hard to track down, and there isn't a huge market for it. So there haven't been a ton of MARC models made. MTH made a couple of AEM 7s, and that's about it. So as someone who lived in the Washington, D.C. area where MARC operates in and out of Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland, this was just one I really, really wanted to have. I mean, I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time I ordered this. That's how long ago it was. And last but not least, before we move on to the Amtrak locomotives, I do want to talk about the cars for this locomotive. These are Atlas O Horizon cars painted up in the MARC paint scheme. Now, calling something rare is a very subjective term, especially in terms of collecting, but I have seen maybe 2 sets of these for sale in my time collecting trains. And one of the sets is here on my layout. So they were made 26 years ago. They've been sitting under my layout for 4 years, waiting for this locomotive to hopefully be made. So yeah, I'm super glad. All right, now we'll move on to the Amtrak ones. So first we'll talk about number 314 here, which is a Amtrak Phase 7 ALC 42. And once again, the naming scheme is nothing too creative. ALC stands for Amtrak Long Distance Charger, and 4,200 denoting the horsepower. Overall, the only differences between one of the Amtrak ones and my MARC one, for example, is that in the real world, the Amtrak ones have a larger fuel tank, which makes sense because they're made to go hundreds of miles, as well as just a little less horsepower. But other than that, they're relatively the same locomotive from the outside. Amtrak purchased originally 75 and have placed an order for 50 more ALC 42s, bringing the total up to 125 to eventually replace all of the existing P42s on Amtrak's roster. But of course, today you can see ALC 42s running alongside P42s and vice versa. Now, Third Rail absolutely killed it with the detailing on these locomotives, especially the details on top of the roof are just extremely striking. The pilot, which looks extremely realistic for a 3-rail model, they include a 2-rail pilot in case you want to make it look even more realistic. A great looking cab interior, moving windshield wipers, but the most striking feature of a charger locomotive is the mesh, which allows you to see inside of the locomotive and it's lit up, which is something that Third Rail was able to recreate, and it looks just amazing, especially at night when that light is lit up. But even down to the minute details, to like little holes on the wheels of the locomotive, replicating the real life ones, it is just outstanding the amount of detail that Third Rail put into these models. And last but not least, my favorite of the three, and that is number 301, which was the second of the ALC 42s, painted up in Amtrak's Day 1 livery in honor of Amtrak's 50th anniversary in 2021. And well, you might be saying, what is the Day 1 paint scheme? And well, if you see that E8 down there on the bottom level, on May 1st, 1971, when Amtrak was created, they needed a locomotive so the press would be able to take a picture of an Amtrak locomotive. There's a Penn Central E8 sitting in Philadelphia, and the guys working in the yard just grabbed a couple of buckets of paint, painted an Amtrak logo around the nose of the locomotive, Amtrak on the side, and that's what the press used. And in honor of Amtrak's 50th anniversary, they took one of their brand new ALC 42s and applied a very similar looking livery to the locomotive, which is what you're seeing here with number 301. And I just love the look of the black, the blue, the white, and red. And on top with all of the added on details, all the grading, it just looks amazing. And I think this number 301 is the real winner of the batch. Now, if you're looking for your own Day 1 E8, you're in luck, because Jay over at Third Rail, who's now running Third Rail, is actually producing the Day 1 E8s to perfectly match your Day 1 ALC 42s. So make sure to go check out that Third and Townsend link down in the description. Orders are closing on those at the end of this month, end of November. So make sure to get your orders in as soon as possible to make sure you can get your E8 and your ALC 42. All right, well, before we fire these up, I do just have to point out, it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, these are, I truly believe, the most detailed and the most gorgeous looking locomotives that have ever been produced in O-scale, especially diesel locomotive wise. But they're held back by one thing, and that is the electronics inside of these. So these come with Lionel's TMCC system with the Electric Railroad Cruise Commander. And because of that, the options for sounds are extremely limiting, as well as the options for the light package. So while on modern day diesel locomotives from MTH or Lionel, when you blow the horn, the ditch lights will flash. But on these Third Rail chargers, that's not the case. You have to push the aux 2 button or put the locomotive in reverse and then back to forward, and that will cause the ditch lights to operate. As well as the vent lights, which I talked about how good they looked. In the real world, they are on all the time while the locomotive is in operation. For whatever reason, it was wired up in a way where the light is only on when the locomotive is operating in reverse, which is an interesting choice. My plan was to never leave these as TMCC. My plan was always to have Proto Sounds 3 installed with them, so this way I would be able to operate them with my existing Atlas and MTH P42s, which is what I plan on doing, and I'll keep you guys updated on that process. But yeah, like I said, these are just absolutely stunning. They're gorgeous. But the electronics, man, just a huge miss. But yeah, so I did have to talk about the ugly. Okay, so I've been blabbering on for long enough. I know what you guys are really here for, and that is to see these awesome locomotives running. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We have a whole train of my Golden Gate Depot Superliners, my Viewliner baggage car, as well. We will break out my Golden Gate Depot Viewliners and MTH Am fleets. We will recreate some real Amtrak trains. In fact, I have a real shot of a Phase 7 Charger crossing over the river in Harper's Ferry, pulling the Capital Limited, so we'll definitely recreate that, as well as my MARC commuter train, which also operates through the real world Harper's Ferry. So, I'll include little things down below, like what train I'm recreating, but I really hope you guys enjoy. Well worth the 4.5-year wait, and I guess I gotta place my order for the second run of these, because just 3. What am I, crazy? I think I need 1 or 2 more. I don't know. We'll see how this video does. That might decide how much I order. Anyways, okay, all right. I'm gonna stop talking. As you can tell how giddy I am. I love these, so let's fire them up, run them around the layout. But for now, take care, stay safe, and happy railroading.
Affirmative, the track is yours. Over. Roger that. All clear. Out. Over. Affirmative, the track is yours. Over. Roger that. All clear. Out.